Welcome to the Maple Forest. Where it came from, nobody knows, but it's my home. When the light starts to fade and the leaves start to fall, it's time for the fairy ball. So I've just woken up after a long, awfully too warm summer, and I've had some cake and tea, and I'm full of energy. And what better way to spend it than with you? So we're going to do some crafts today and say goodbye to summer and hello fall. Every fairy has a season that they're in charge of, and mine is end of summer. Every year, I like to make a few things that spark joy and say hello and goodbye to the two seasons. So we're going to be making these little mushroom and fairy house jars first, followed by a nice little surprise. Now come follow me and let's get started. Now first things first, I'm going to gather all my supplies. Most of them I got from my one human friend that has been very helpful. I'm going to take this shiny stuff, I think it's called foil, and I'm going to wrap it all the way around the jar. In the places where it didn't stick too well, I did add a little bit of that hot glue. I'm then taking some more foil and adding some of that hot glue stuff to make a little window in my jar. I think it's really magical and would make a perfect little home for my friends as well. Then I'm taking the lid of the jar and using it as a template for how wide I need to make the foil. Then I squished everything up and added more foil, being sure to wrap it pretty tightly to make sure that there's no gaps or places that, well, it would collapse once I put the clay on. And I'm making it kind of into a tall, pointy hat shape with a little curl. Once I have all of my foil just how I want it, nice and round and squished, I'm going to go ahead and glue it back onto the lid. So that way it's all ready for the clay. Next, I'm going to start adding the clay to my little home. I'm making it a little thicker at the base and then smoothing everything up and out. I even added another layer of clay just to make it more of that mushroom base shape with a wider, well, trunk. Once that's all smoothed out, I'm going to add a little bit more clay around my window to make it all nice and cohesive and pretty. And then once that is all smoothed out, it's time to make our little window frame. With that same piece of thin clay I rolled out, I'm just putting it around the window. And then I'm also making little supports through the window. I love this style. I wish the humans did this one more often. And no fairy home is complete without a door, so I'm going to sculpt that next and find a good spot for it. This way I can come visit anyone that decides to live here. I'm next going to make a nice little door frame, and of course a doorknob. No door is complete without that, right? Then I'm going to take the rest of the clay and boop, apply it to the top. And smooth everything out, which is the most tricky part. Next, I'm going to add some texture with this super fine needle-like sculpting tool. I wanted to make the wooden door frame and the window look a bit more realistic, and also add some texture to my mushroom base. And now, with this little jar lid on, it's ready for baking. But first we have to make its front. I'm going to use the same method and just build up the foil with some glue. This time I'm really focusing on the bottom of the mushroom to give it that classical shape. And with all of my clay applied, it's time to make the mushroom hat. Now this one, I didn't squish quite as much. I made it a bit lighter since I'm going to be putting clay on both sides of this guy. So I'm going to glue it back on the lid. Easy peasy. And then once again, just put some clay on. I'm going to smooth everything out and flare out the ends to give it a more natural look. Now once I have the clay on the bottom as well, I use that same skinny tool to make some little lines to give it some nice mushroom texture. And now I did bake everything for 15 minutes at 275 degrees Fahrenheit or 130 Celsius until they're all nice and ready to be painted. Now this is my absolute favorite part. I love painting. I learned how to paint, oh gosh, maybe 200 years ago, and I am a bit rusty at it right now, having just woken up, but I wanted to give it a go and make these little jars look more complete. So I'm adding in a beige yellow color first, and then I'm taking a brown and I'm going in and painting all the bark a little bit more of a realistic color, and it also really helps to bring out that neat texture. I don't like to paint too slowly, since there's so much to get done, being hasty is most helpful. Next, I'm going to add some more brown around the base, but not too much brown. I find if I paint it and then wipe it off, it really gives a pretty effect. It looks a little bit like dirt, but in the best, most possible way. Next, I'm going to take some orange and paint the hat part. Then add in a little bit more yellow to blend everything together and give it some more sparkle. Ta-da! Now that my little fairy house is complete and all ready to go, it's time to start on my mushroom. So I'm going to use a lighter beige color this time and get a good even coat on. I'm going to add in a little bit of an orangey color and just blend it up as well. Next, I'm painting the mushroom red, of course, the classic. I also added a little bit of orange on top to give it some dimension and again some sparkle. Then I'm going to paint the underside that same soft beige color. Trying my best to not get any on the top side, but it happens. Easily fixed. Now it's time to add in my little white dots. I just loaded up the paintbrush and I'm dotting them on all over, trying not to make a pattern. This looks more realistic and natural and will impress the other fairies. Now that my mushroom jar is all complete, I am thrilled. I love how both of these turned out, and I'm so excited to show all the other fairies. Next, I wanted to make some teacup candles. Us fairies absolutely love teacups, and I thought this would be a fun thing to bring some light into the darker months. So first, I'm going out and asking the sunflower if I can use one of her flowers. Luckily, she said yes. I'm taking some wax I also got from the humans, and a bowl, and of course my teacup. I also have some smaller tacky wax, and scissors, and my sunflower. I adore wax. It's hard to come by in the fairy world, so I was pretty happy to get my hands on some. The first thing I'm going to do to make our teacup lights is take some of this tacky wax and put it in the very center bottom of the teacup. That way my wick will stay in place when I add the hot wax in. I did want to use these wicks that have a really nice wax coating on them, but they were a little bit too small for the teacup. I did make a second teacup using this wick, which worked quite a bit better. So for this first one, I used some string that I thought was perfect. However, it didn't burn quite as well as I would have liked. But that's okay, lesson learned, right? So I'm going to take the wick and wrap it around a paintbrush to keep it in place for when I add the hot wax in. So I'm taking about 2 handfuls of wax in this, what's the word, microwave safe dish? Then I'm going to pour the hot wax into my teacup and let it sit for about an hour after cleaning up any messes. Once it's pretty hardened, I'm going to add in all of my magical items. So I have these 2 little crystals that I'm going to add in. And then of course my sunflower. I'm going to thank each petal as I pull it off. And then I'm going to place them all over the top of my candle. I also got some of these really pretty little whimsical flowers. They don't bloom in my season, so I'm not sure what they're called. But I thought they would look really nice here in this candle. I'm going to place them all over the top of my candle, try not to push them too far into the wax. But I think it really adds a whimsical, magical element. And one more just for good luck. Then I'm going to take the leftover wax and heat it up one last time and put a thin layer all over the top of my candle to keep everything in place and nice and cozy. And ta-da! Once everything's cured and hardened, I'm going to go ahead and cut my wick. And it's ready! I am so happy with how everything turned out. My fairy house, my little mushroom jar, and of course, my candle. Thank you for crafting with the fairy today. Until next time, bye!